So as the children are leaving, I'm going to invite Rev Norma up. She's going to lead us through a celebration of the New Year's Japanese style. So let's give a warm welcome to Rev Norma Burton.
Thank you for that warm welcome. That felt good. It's so nice to look out and see all of you. Why don't you take a moment to look around and see all of you and appreciate your neighbors that are here, your friends, and friends that you haven't met yet. We're so blessed to come together in this community, this spiritual community, in this sacred container of unity. It gives us courage when we come together like this to face into new things. And I think we need the courage to face into a new year sometimes, don't you? That's probably why we bolster ourselves with New Year's resolutions. Because we want to be able to do something new and different, to make a change, to have hope. But it takes courage to have hope. Because change really changes things, right? It really changes things. It really changes us. So as this New Year's came around, I had to admit to myself that sometimes I'm not feeling like making a New Year's resolution. Have any of you felt that way? Sometimes I'm a little tired of pulling myself up by my bootstraps and saying, okay, you're going to go to the gym more. Or whatever that thing is that you want to do, you know? But another part of me says, hey, we are who we are. Like John Kabat-Zinn, the Zen teacher, says, wherever you go, there you are. You know? So maybe coming into this New Year's is something about not always striving to be better, but being more present to ourselves. Being more present in a deeper way to who we really are. And that something might be ripe to change in us in a really natural way. So over these holidays, I wanted to be awake and aware to what came my way, to what might be indicating to me something about change coming. So I was back on the East Coast, visiting my mom, and for the first time in memory, in recorded history, they said, all over the East Coast it was in the 70s. And there was green grass everywhere, and some of the crocuses were coming out. Uh-oh. Very weird. It's getting harder and harder for anyone to say there's no climate change going on. But there was little mention of this on the news, so it made me think that so much that goes on in our society to keep people unaware and asleep or in delusion is bombarding us all the time. So no wonder the great spiritual teachers have all come along to say to us, wake up. Buddhism calls us to wake up. Jesus prodded us to open our eyes and see that divine is right here with us, Emmanuel. And then the other thing that happened to me, I went to the Star Wars movie number 7. It's entitled The Force Awakens. You know, everyone was excited about it. There was a big hype about it. And I went and I was excited too to see what they're doing there. So I'm going to be talking to you, weaving in some things about what's going on in our culture through the Force Awakening. It seems like the masses have a big desire to wake up. That was the biggest selling blockbuster movie in history. So people are wanting to get it, to wake up. That's our calling as human beings, to wake up to who we really are, and then to do something with that, to make a difference on our planet. All the great traditions of social justice teach us that what happens to one of us affects us all. So here at Unity, our mission statement is like that. It says, we want to be an awakened people living mindfully engaged in healing our planet, one person at a time, beginning with ourselves. Can you agree with that? Does that sound good? Can you affirm that in your heart? We want to be an awakened people, changing our planet, one person at a time, beginning with me. We have the courage to do that. So to begin our time together today, to join our hearts together in what we do affirm together, I've asked Anya to come forward and Richard to play some music in the background. And we're going to say these affirmations together. I know that can be kind of kitschy, but in Unity and in New Thought services, lots of times people say affirmations together. And I kind of like it because it implants it in your heart to say it out loud together. So thank you, Anya, for coming and helping us to affirm what we do believe in for this new year.
So together we affirm. I'll say the line first and then you can repeat it. And let's just be aware that as we do this, we create an entire field of energy in this room. And we can send it out to the entire world. This day, I choose to live in oneness.
This day, I choose to live in oneness.
This day, I see myself in everyone in me.
This day, I see myself in everyone and everyone in me.
No longer am I deceived by outer appearances of differences.
No longer am I deceived by outer appearances of differences.
Underneath our glorious diversity, we are all sons and daughters of the Most High.
Underneath our glorious
Diversity, we are all sons and daughters of the Most High. I am grounded in the awareness that we share the same atmosphere.
I am grounded in the awareness that we share the same atmosphere.
We breathe the same air.
We breathe the same air.
And our tears are equally wet.
And our tears are equally wet.
Wherever I am,
Wherever I am,
I model the beloved community.
I model the beloved community.
There is only one of us here.
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 Our purpose is to bring joy and wholeness to each other's lives.
Our purpose is to bring joy and wholeness to each other's lives.
The divinity in me honors the divinity in you.
The divinity in me honors the divinity in you.
Put our hands together and say Namaste.
Namaste.
To each other.
Thanks to Michael Stillwater for this chant. I'm opening. And there are different sections to this, and each one will repeat quite a lot, so I welcome you to sing along, please.
When we open to the spirit of it all, it opens our hearts to things maybe that we didn't know we could handle, that we didn't know that we could make it through. And there's a wonderful poem by is it Anne Sarton? Anne Sexton, that's right. That Jan's going to come and read for us, and it's entitled Courage. See if you relate to it.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
You know, really everybody in this room is awake. How did you get here? The awake that the Buddha was talking about is this awakeness. So, some seem to know, some pretend to not. So, that's something to think about. And the poetic voice, and this is really a good poem. The poetic voice is your voice. When you read a poem or you hear it, it's your voice. It's the voice of the inner self. So listen. It is in the small things that we see it. The child's first step is awesome as an earthquake. The first time you rode a bike wallowing up the sidewalk. The first spanking when your heart went on a journey all alone. When they called you crybaby or poor or fatty or crazy and made you into an alien, you drank their acid and concealed it. Later, if you faced the death of bombs and bullets, you did not do it with a banner. You did it with only a hat to cover your heart. You did not fondle the weakness inside you, though it was there. Your courage was a small coal that you kept swallowing. If your buddy saved you and died himself in doing so, then his courage was not courage. It was love. Love as simple as shaving soap. Later, if you have endured a great despair, then you tended it in your heart, getting a transfusion from the fire, picking the scabs off of your heart, then wringing it out like a sock. Next, my kinsman, you powdered your sorrow, you gave it a back rub, and then you covered it with the blanket, and after it had slept for a while, it woke in the wings of the roses and was transformed. Later, when you face old age and its natural conclusion, your courage will still be shown in the little ways. Each spring will be a sword you'll sharpen. Those you love will live in a fever of love. And you'll bargain with the calendar, and at the last moment, when death opens the back door, you'll put on your carpet slippers and stride out. Really?
Great reader.
So I want to read the words, just the first verse of this song, Life by Kirtana, that a lot of you probably know of. But I think it's great to read them after that wonderful poem. Life is a pretty great place to be if you don't mind mystery, if you can keep an open mind. Here's the coals again, and dance when the coals are burning hot, and forget them when they're not, and just move with the energy. And revel in the sunshine when it's on your face, and put a layer on when winter takes its place. Life is a pretty great place to be if you don't mind mystery, if you can keep an open mind, and dance when the coals are burning hot, and forget them when they're not, and just move with the energy, and revel in the sunshine when it's on your face, and put a layer on when winter takes its place. In love is a very sweet place to be if you don't mind company, and a little bit of pain sometimes, for we are connected at the source, and life will take its course and bring us into unity. I feel a family growing based on love and trust. We've such a flock of angels watching over us. And I feel a hope I've never felt, that the hardest rocks will melt and a new landscape will come in view. For earth, when in love and light and grace we begin to take our places and each do what we came to do. It doesn't have to be the way it's always been. Oh, we can break those patterns now and start again in life. La 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 la. In love.
in life, when these things happen, it calls us into this kind of feeling that that song brings us. Go with the flow, open up, be aware, see what's presenting itself. And sometimes we're called to go places that we didn't know we'd be called to go, deep places inside, places outside. One of the poets that I've admired so much through the years is Wendell Berry, because he's somebody who, when things started happening and he would feel distraught, he would always go outside into nature. And he found a great grace that always met him there. Don't you find that too? When you take the time to go out into nature, we have so much nature to appreciate here. So Wendell Berry, I've asked Karen to come and read a beautiful poem about grace.
Grace in the woods. I part out the branches and come in between the blessed and the blessing trees. The wood is shining this morning. Branches hang full of light in the air. Still. Perfect in its rise and in its fall, it takes the place it has been coming to for years. The tree has not hastened here, nor lagged. See how surely it has sought itself, its roots passing lordly through the earth. See how without confusion it is all that it is, how flawless its grace is. Though I am silent, there is singing all around me. Though I am dark, there is vision around me. Though I am heavy, there is flight around me. Running or walking, the way is the same. Be still. Be still. He moves your bones and the way is clear. Be still, and he moves your bones and the way is clear.
So this is my version. Hopefully it's close enough to Snaptom Kar. I hope I'm saying her name right. By Thy Grace. It's a really beautiful chant that I know many of you have heard. And the words are simply, I think these are the correct words. By Thy grace, it's by Thy grace that I sing. It's by Thy grace that I sing your holy name. Someday the day shall come when all the glory shall be thine. People will say, it's yours, and I shall deny, not mine, thine. It's by thy grace that I see. It's by thy grace that I see. It's by thy grace that I see your holy name. It's by thy grace that I see. It's by thy grace that I see. It's by thy grace that I see your holy name. Sing that a couple more times. It's by thy grace Someday the day shall come when all the glory shall be thine. People will say it's yours, and I shall deny, not mine. It's by thy grace that I see. It's by thy grace that I see. It's by thy grace that I see your holy name. It's by thy grace that I see. It's by thy grace that I see. It's by thy grace that I see your holy name. Someday the day shall come when all the glory shall be thine. People will say it's yours, and I shall deny, Lord, mine. Oh, Lord, mine. Ooh, it's by thy grace that I see. It's by thy grace that I sing. It's by thy grace that I sing your holy name. Your holy name. Oh, your holy name.
Doesn't your soul just feel graced by that beautiful music? Well, we're here today on the first Sunday of the new year to bring in the new year with the 108 gongs that we've done for several years in a row now in the Japanese tradition. I first experienced this phenomenon when I lived in Japan in the early 80s. And it was a time in my life when I was, having worked in the battered women's movement, was seeking refuge because it had been a really hard time. It's never hard doing the social services work and helping the people. As many of you know, it's hard to face the system. The systems of our world are pretty difficult to deal with. And we'd had a lot of backlash coming against us as workers in the battered women's movement. And so I was worn and tired, and I might say really caught in a dualistic mindset because I had seen so much harshness and, yes, evil being enacted in families. And I was in a place of not having hope for humanity. So I went to Japan needing refuge, and it's interesting where we get led to go sometimes, because in a way Japan is an ultimately exquisite, beautiful place, and in another way it's a samurai land. It's a land that you are brought into facing a challenge and a hard awakening that really calls forth a lot of courage. One thing about Japan that you might begin to get what I mean is that coming from our culture, everything over there is the opposite. than what we've experienced. So it deconstructs your identity. For example, at weddings they wear black, and at funerals they wear white. Just that little example, you know. There's so many things there that are the opposite of our constructed notions of what society is like. So I went there and faced into a deep deconstruction and a realization that I didn't know a lot that I thought I knew. And I decided I wanted to give in to that rather than fighting it. I watched a lot of people over there flee from it. Foreigners who came would end up not liking it, not liking that confrontation and running away from it. But I decided I want to make it through. I want to go through this deconstruction and see what I'm like on the other side. So I'll give myself to it, no matter what it takes. So that took me into, I think, really understanding more about the heart of Buddhism than I ever could have living in my own culture. There's a saying about who is a bodhisattva, you know, and I always felt like I was called to be a bodhisattva. Maybe you have too. Maybe you've heard that word and thought, I really relate to that. Well, a bodhisattva is called a heroic-minded one who is set on enlightenment. Heroic-minded one who is set on enlightenment. We might think of a bodhisattva as a fully enlightened Buddha person, yet traditionally, a bodhisattva is anyone who, motivated by great compassion, has generated this heart force. And the heart force is called bodhicitta. Bodhicitta. B-O-D-H-I-C-I-T-T-A. This heart force. And so they've generated this heart force and therefore are dedicated to attain unconditional loving kindness for all sentient beings. Dedicated to attain unconditional loving kindness for all sentient beings. So generating this heart force became an interest of mine, what that might be all about. So I find my heart welcomed in unity, this bodhisattva heart, because I think that's what we're all about here too. We're about awakening the heart force within us, realizing that we are consciousness, that we are a greater consciousness than just our individual self. And so we want to be getting free of delusions. We want to be moving things out of our lives that are distracting us, that are misleading us to thinking the wrong thoughts, right? So we're actually here in this room and at Unity as human beings celebrating that we are growing beyond duality. We're growing beyond a dualistic mindset. We can safely say non-dualism is our spiritual practice here at Unity. And it's becoming the rising trend, rippling like a great tidal wave in the minds of the masses out there. So I just want to be a little bit clear about what this is about practicing non-duality. It's not that we deny diversity. Just like I was saying about being in Japan, you know, I had to welcome the diversity, the difference, things that were different than me. So it's not about not wanting diversity. On the contrary, biologists tell us that creation or creativity is the most healthy when it's full of diversity, right? The most diverse ecosystems are the most healthy. So difference of opinion exists in all of our human lives. It's what makes us diverse, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with diversity. But the idea of dualism is what's leading us astray. Dualism is the place that all wars are started. It's the place that wars in our own families and our own communities grab us, as they grab us into being right. So a dualistic mindset is a polarized mindset. It's like, I'm over here thinking this is right and knowing this, and you're over there thinking that's right and knowing that. And so conflict. It's the way we distance and separate and get angry and defensive because we have differences. Have any of you ever experienced that in your family? Sometimes we're afraid to go home for the holidays, because we might experience the diversity in our families, right? Well, when I went home to be with my mom, it was a challenging time, not so much because of that, experiencing the diversity, because we tried to be in a really copacetic place of accepting one another, but what was challenging for me was that she's getting older and not doing too well physically, and everything in me rose up to want to fix it, Only being there for a short time, I had to hold myself back from constantly trying to tell her, do this, do that, change this, try to do this, and just settle back into a loving acceptance of what is. It's a very courageous and challenging thing to do, to love and care and want to heal someone and help someone be relieved from their suffering, and yet step back and wonder into how. I found a passage in Thich Nhat Hanh that helped me in my thinking about this, about how do we really come through to being a heart force in the world for change in a good way. Not just trying to lay our trip on somebody else or change them in the way that we think they should change or in the timing that we think they should change. Thich Nhat Hanh said in his wonderful book, Being Peace. How many of you have read that book? I read it years ago and I picked it up again during this holiday season. It's such a rich manual of how we can be peace in the world. And he said, I think our society is a difficult place to live. If we're not careful, we can become uprooted, disconnected from our very selves. This is very important, he said. We've seen so many people who are alienated from themselves and from each other, and it feels like they can't be reintegrated. We know that this can happen to any one of us if we're not careful. I know that people in Western society suffer a great deal psychologically, and that's why many follow Buddhist practices in order to solve their psychological problems. I know that I myself, this is him talking, have lived a long time in this society, and sometimes I feel like withdrawing from it and retreating back into myself and getting away from all humans. But my practice helps me remain present in society because I'm aware that if I leave society, I'm not going to be able to change it. I hope that those who are practicing Buddhism or any of the great faith traditions can succeed in keeping their feet on the earth, staying in society. That's our hope for the world. So I liked Wendell Berry's poems in that regard, like he goes out to the earth and there finds a presence that helps him stay present. What ways do you have of finding that deep inner presence, connection in yourself that help you to stay present in difficult circumstances? We talk about oneness, and we do have this ability within us to come into a oneness. Jean Houston says that we've got this entelechy inside of us, this intelligence that we can link into, that links us with the intelligence of the earth. One of the oldest tribes of all humans who are still on earth, the Aborigines in Australia, they still have this strong knowingness of this permeating of the essence of spirit into the world of the ordinary. They call the dream time the place that exists simultaneously right here within ordinary reality, right next to clock time, But we have to wake up to the dream time, they say, ironically. You think about sleeping to go into the dream time. The Aborigines say, we've got to wake up to the dream time. Because they believe that there's a portion of you, a portion of every person that exists there in the dream time. And we forget about it, and we leave it over there, and we don't pay attention to it. But that each one of us, we're born here with a certain essence self that came from the spiritual realms. Hang in here with me, try to really hear what I'm saying here. That we were born from the spiritual realms. We came from the invisible, from the dark womb of the mother of the universe. And we were born here on earth. And the Aborigines say that each one of us, our essence self, is linked up with a totem spirit of this earth. A lake, or a river, or a tree, or a rock. And that when we were born, it joined with us in the womb at about 5 months in the womb. And that's how we came to be human. Some force, some heart force came into you from earth and joined with you to enliven you and make you a human being, an earthling, that made you have a heart for the earth, a love for the earth, a love affair with the Mother Earth in a more profound way than we've ever really let ourselves know. We have this entelechy of the earth within us that we must connect with. And some are saying that this is what's reawakening in us. What must reawaken in all of us, especially us Westerners who have gotten more disconnected. This presence, this aura of the piece of land or the sea or the tree or the mountain that is your relationship has got to awaken within you to help give you an equilibrium or a centered place to come from in any particular moment. So back to visiting my mom, when I was there and feeling sad and distraught about her situation, I knew I needed to take time to go on walks. So I went walking around this beautiful golf course, and always I was met there by the grace of nature and the connected feeling. I love geese. I grew up with a lot of geese, and I'd go there, and on the pond were geese, and when I'd walk, they would fly up and make their wonderful sound, and I could just feel the ministering to me of everything around me that helped me to come into this centered place again in myself. A non-anxious place, a place where I wasn't just trying to fix it, be my social worker self, There's an example of a pencil standing on its point. You can picture that. If you try to stand a pencil on its point and you give it a little shove, it will tip over. Now compare that to a heavy picture hanging from a nail on the wall. If you give that a shove, it may swing a little, but it will soon return to its equilibrium point. So you see what I'm saying here? In your inner self, in your everyday mind, if you're disconnected, you could be like that pencil standing on its point, less stable than a mind that's in a grounded presence, the earth. So it's important that we center ourselves every day, that we go to this inner stable essence place inside of ourselves, grounding in the presence, focused. What kind of presence do you have in you? Who do you identify with in the world of nature? Just feel it for a moment. Do you identify with the bear? Is there a grrr in you? Do you identify with the mountain? Is there a calm, stable steadiness in you? Do you identify with the river? Are you able to go with the flow and be changeable and get around all the obstacles? Do you identify with a bird that can come out of nowhere and give you the sense of flight above the problems? be with that for a moment and feel into what is your earth totem energy. What is the nail that the picture of your identity hangs upon? We come to know our true identity not by clinging to some idea that we have of it, but by constantly letting go and discovering something new in the new year. For example, Thich Nhat Hanh tells the story about this Vietnamese woman that he knew named Mrs. Nugent. And she was known for having a very strong spiritual practice in which she got up every day and would, for an hour, she would beat on a drum and she would call out all the Buddhist names of God. She would call them all out very strongly, not for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but for a whole hour. And it filled the neighborhood. Everybody could hear her do that. Strong spiritual practice. But the problem was that also everybody knew that she wasn't a very kind person. And so she'd come out of her strong spiritual practice and then she'd go about bossing everyone around and controlling people and getting very angry sometimes and thinking she was right. So one day one of the neighbors decided he was going to do something about this. So he went to her door when she was getting ready to start her spiritual practice, and he stood outside of her door as she began it, calling out the names of God, and he started calling out her name. Mrs. Nugent, Mrs. Nugent, Mrs. Nugent. And she was thinking, he knows I'm practicing. What is he doing? I am so upset with him. And she kept doing her practice, and he kept calling out her name, Mrs. Nugent, Mrs. Nugent, relentlessly saying it over and over, just like she was saying the names of God. She got louder, he got louder. Finally, she stopped, and she was all in a upset place. And she went out and she said to him, don't you realize I was trying to do my spiritual practice and you're interrupting me? And he said to her, well, see how angry you got at me for shouting out your name for 10 minutes? Maybe God is a little angry at you for shouting out his name all this time and not really listening to him. So sometimes we get stuck in our ways of being, and we're not really, even in our spiritual practices, really opening up to the grace that's being offered to us, to what we need to listen to. When Thich Nhat Hanh was in his 20s, he said he knew a person who had suffered a lot, and he had that same feeling that I did about wanting to try to help him. And so he did something kind of like this guy did to Mrs. Nugent. This man that he knew was in the meditation center, and he had come there because he needed to get away from society and retreat and find some calmness. And he cried a lot, which was good, and he found refuge, and he told the community a lot about his pains and sorrows, and it went on for months, and Thich Nhat Hanh said even years, that he was really in a lot of sorrow and a lot of drama about it. And the community was patient and everything and really held him in it, and they gave him this little cabin to live in. But then Thich Nhat Hanh wrote this poem about him, and this is what he said. The poem is called, If You Ask How Much I Want. If you ask how much I want, I will tell you that I want it all. This morning, you and I and all humans are flowing into this marvelous stream of oneness. Now remember what I was saying about the Bodhisattva, being focused on getting all the way there to enlightenment. So Thich Nhat Hanh is saying, this morning, you and I, all humans, we are flowing in this marvelous stream of oneness, small pieces of imagination as we are. We've come a long way to find ourselves, and for ourselves in the dark, the illusion of emancipation. The illusion of emancipation. This morning, my brother got back from his long adventure. He's kneeling at the altar now in a new way. His eyes are full of tears. His soul is longing for a shore to set anchor at. a yearning I once had. We let him kneel there and weep. We let him cry his heart out. We let him have his refuge there for 1,000 years, enough to dry all his tears. And then one night, I came and I set fire to his shelter, the small cottage on the hill, knowing that my fire would destroy everything and remove his only life raft after a shipwreck. In the utmost anguish of his soul, the shell will break. The light of the glorious hut will witness his deliverance. I will wait for him beside the burning cottage. Tears will run down my cheeks too. And I will be there to contemplate his new being. And as I hold his hands in mine and ask him how much he wants, he will smile and say that he wants it all, just as I did. My spiritual friends, I want it all. And I know that that takes giving it my all. I think I'm in a community of you that want it all too. And that we know it takes giving it our all. In this way that I'm speaking of opening and letting go, and letting grace rearrange our bones. Rearrange our bones so that the truly new can come. New ways of showing our love. New ways of getting all the way there to a new identity. So, grace. As we enter into this time of doing the Tonglen practice that I'd like to have us do, the Buddhist practice of a simple way of relieving suffering, I want to have us think about how there are simple ways to be in the field of grace. It's not that complicated. Sometimes we want to make it harder than it is. We think we've got to work so hard to bring changes in this world or in people's lives, but sometimes it's a very simple thing that we can do to enter into this grace. As simple as listening to 108 gongs sound. People all over Japan gathered on New Year's Eve. Almost everybody in Japan does it, really. They come to the temples and they listen. They just listen deeply to the 108 gongs. 108 because that's the number of all of our sins, quote unquote, our obscurations, our obstacles to realizing our awakened state. So they allow the gongs to reverberate through them. And this year as we do it, rather than having you think about the number of the gongs, like sometimes we can get obsessed about, is Richard going to really do 108? Is he going to count right? And so this year I'd like us to do something different with our minds. I'd like us to do the Tonglen practice. And Tonglen literally means the giving and the receiving. And it's about our breath. As we breathe out and breathe in, we are giving and receiving. Let's just do that for a minute together. Breathe out, letting go, and breathing in, we are receiving. To begin this practice, you can sit in a meditative posture, relaxed in your chair, and gently close your eyes and let your body and mind settle in. You want to feel relaxed and open. This Tonglen is like a Buddhist prayer to create a sense of spaciousness in which the giving and receiving can take place. Having recognized the futility of my selfishness and the great benefit of loving others, may I bring all beings to joy. Having recognized the futility of my selfishness and the great benefit of loving others, may I bring all beings to joy. May I send all my virtues and happiness to others through the strength of this practice. And may I receive the suffering and obstacles and defilements of other beings in all realms into my motherly heart. praying that prayer, breathing. As you breathe in, we're receiving, we're breathing in any agitation or resistance or fears that we have, any anger, any of those difficult things. And we breathe it in the form of a black cloud, a dark, heavy energy. But immediately we turn right on the heel of that and we breathe out. And as you exhale, whoa, you give yourself some spaciousness from that. You breathe out peace and light. A cool, light energy. So continue with this simple pattern of breathing in heaviness, hot, heat, hot air, and breathing out lightness and coolness until it's familiar to you. The heaviness represents the suffering. The lightness represents well-being. In heaviness, out lightness. And now imagine that you're actually breathing through all the pores of your body. On the in-breath, heavy, hot air enters every pore of your skin. And on the out-breath, cool light flows from every pore. Visualize now that there has been a metal sheath around your heart. Because when things happen that are difficult for you, you put up your protections and it hardens your heart. Well, this practice invites you in a very simple way to dissolve this metal sheath and open your heart to its natural, non-judgmental state of warmth and kindness and spaciousness. You can do this. You can let go of that sheath. Let it break apart. When the in-breath of suffering touches it, instead of hardening around that, let your heart open to the hot, heavy air and let it vanish into the spaciousness of your heart. There arises this grace, this natural mercy. It's able to encounter the heaviness. It allows you to be with the suffering in a new way, to see beneath it and around it, to surround it with grace. You're awakening your heart by doing this practice. And you're doing it so that you can relieve your suffering and others' suffering. Breathing in the heaviness, breathing out the lightness. Keep doing it. Keep practicing. And now, bring your mind to somebody in your life that you want to do this Tonglen practice for. It could be somebody who's dead or alive, but somebody that you feel a deep connection with and you're wanting to relieve their suffering. It could be a parent, a child, a pet, your partner, your grandmother who's already passed, your dearest friend, your beloved teacher, someone that you know is going through some kind of suffering. You do anything to help this person. Be with this one and feel what she is experiencing right now. Let your whole being turn toward her suffering. And your wish is simply that it might be relieved. You don't know how. You don't know what the right way is. Maybe the cabin has to burn down. You don't know. All you have to do is breathe it in. Receive her or his suffering into your heart, where it can be relieved. Feel how vulnerable this one is. Visualize their suffering. Trungpa Rinpoche used to do this by visualizing the suffering that he'd seen of a little dog once, and he'd picture this little dog suffering and how much he wanted to relieve its suffering. So that's kind of feeling here, how much you want to relieve the suffering of this person that you care about. And you can do it in this instant of the in-breath, allowing their suffering to touch your heart. The bodhicitta, the soft spot in your heart where all grace resides, where you are vulnerable too. From this space, spontaneously arises a change, an out-breath of mercy and healing, a natural flow. The change just takes place. You breathe out, and you send out a deep, cool light and a spacious, healing breath to your loved person. Let the out-breath flow through every pore of your body, and let this one suffering remind you of the many others who find themselves suffering in the same way, with a sickness, with a mental confusion. Let your heart connect to all of them. Now breathe in all of their suffering. Just in this moment, let your heart break open. And now send them out healing with your out-breath. Lightness, blessedness, healing. It's that easy. Don't analyze it. Don't analyze what you're doing. Don't try to figure it out. Simply do the practice. Breathe in the heavy, hot smoke of your suffering and others' suffering, and breathe out this hot, heavy, suffering breath into clarity, surrender, relief, kindness. Breathing in, breathing out. Suffering is relieved. Allow yourself now to go into this visualization. Be with this person that you've been picturing, or you can bring in another person that you want to be with, relieving their suffering, or you can do it for a condition in your own life. As we listen to the 108 gongs reverberating through this room, sending away our obscurations, let this Tonglen practice send away the suffering of these beloved people. 108 gongs, it's not very long, but it's long enough to make a big impact on our world. All of us doing this Tonglen practice for this wonderful sacred moment. Here we go. Let us bless the world. How long does it take to clear the obscurations on planet Earth? A long time, and not very long. This year, may we bring dualism and the perceptions of conflict to an end in our hearts. May we walk further down this path. This whole dark worker, light worker thing that comes up in Star Wars. When we get further down the path, we realize that ultimately, as we help ourselves, we are helping others, and as we help others, we are helping ourselves, that there's only one of us here, that the light and the dark are in me, are in you, are in all of us. It's our heritage on planet Earth, and we can end the battles once and for all by accepting the gifts of this whole journey of being an earthling. Only on the lower levels of perception are we stuck in perceiving good guys and bad guys. And as we get higher, the challenges become bigger, but the changes become more and more subtle. We're going somewhere this year. We're going there together. We're remembering who we are. We're remembering the truth. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. And I am free. And you are free to be you. I am free to be me. And life is not a struggle anymore. Life is not a thing to resist. The battle is over. The fear has ended. We will embrace all. And we will have it all. Let the all flow through you and around you. And suddenly we're going to realize that everything is so much easier than we thought. It's full of grace. Aho. I'd love for us now to do an act of giving and receiving and taking the offering. Our offering. It's an opportunity to breathe out, give, and to receive back the blessings of the fruits of this community. As you give your offering right now, I want you to imagine what your money is going to accomplish in someone's life this year through our community to relieve their suffering. That's our heart's desire, that what we give, what we receive, will be relieving the suffering in our lives and the lives around us. So bless your offering as you give it, that it may relieve suffering.
We will sing something, if you like, of the offering. It's number 6, I think. Test. Hello, anybody out there? Check. Hello. And this song was written by a man named Lawrence Cole, and he wrote it inspired by the words of Araya Mountain Dreamer's invitation. And the key question in there is, I want to know if you can see the beauty, even when it's not pretty every day. And it's meant, there's 2 parts, and it's meant to be sung as a partner song, but it's kind of tricky rhythmically, so don't worry about that. See
energy as we bless our offering. We say, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And so it is. You can see that Tonglen practice in our prayer right there. So thank you all. And I'd love for you to get in a big circle now. It's a wonderful time of our service when we can be in the big circle together and see one another and sing our closing song together.
So this song we're going to end with is by Ricky Byers, Michael Beckwith, Agape song. It's called We Let the Love. It's really simple. The words are only, we let the love wash over us. We let it be. And you might want to think in your lives, whatever you're just having to let be right now, whatever you're wanting to bring in, release. So if you feel like you need a little extra love to wash over you, a little extra support, you want to step in the middle of the circle and let the sound of our voices.
Some can step in the middle and receive the blessing of it if you want to.
Whenever you feel like it, if you feel like you're done in the middle, just come back to the circle, but just feel like that could be like a womb space for you, if you like. We let the love wash over us. We let it be. We let the love wash over us. We let it be. We let the Lord wash over us. We let it be.
Open your bodhicitta hearts to receive the softness, the gentleness, the love that's here.
Wash over us. We let it be.
Picture our beloved earth in the center here, letting the love wash over our whole planet, all the sentient beings.
Wash over us. We let it be. We let the Lord wash over us.
Have a grace-filled new year, knowing that you are better.